All right, good afternoon. Once again, welcome to another edition of Google Plus Hangout for our channel's Beam. Today we are looking at the president's time in office since he took over the reins or took over the administration, or since his administration kicked off in mid 2015. How well has he performed? To what extent will you say he has fulfilled some of his campaign promises? But then, um, we will be asking you these questions, and we will be wanting to hear from you, or just want to get a bit of what you think uh, we have done so far. Joining me to look at this first is Yahya Yakubu. He is a political scientist with specialties, or he specialized in African comparative politics. Good afternoon, and thanks for coming on the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Victor.
We also have Stanley Achonu. Stanley works with budget. It'll be safe to say that he is interested in tracing what goes on with budgets all around the country. Stanley, thanks for coming on the program this afternoon as well.
Thank you for having me, Victor.
Sure, you're welcome. Well, you are here in Lagos, Nigeria, so let's give you what the footballers will say, or what has been referred to as in football parlance as home advantage. Let me just begin with you. How would you put it? I mean, to what extent would you say the president has performed since taking over power in May of 2015?
Victor, it's been mixed. Expectation was quite high. Understandably so, because there were a lot of promises made, and there wasn't any attempt to calm expectation level in the campaigns. The impression was created that things would turn out. So yes, it's been mixed feeling. A few successes here and there, but people have largely been very disappointed at the pace at which this administration has tackled even very obvious issues. And there are numerous of them that they could have acted faster than they did. Prime example is simple appointment of ministers. The president did say he would take a lot of time to find the best hands to appoint. And then when he made the list public, I could have appointed those same people for him before he won the election. So there wasn't any big revelation in the list of the ministers that he took several months to appoint, and that has built a foundation on which we will assess his government on all how the economy has been managed. The lack of the non-appointment of ministers on time has badly impacted the economy, as we have seen recently with the inflation results and the statistics released by the Bureau of National Bureau of Statistics, which has clearly shown that the economy has tanked. In terms of corruption, in terms of fight against Boko Haram, he has made clear effort to tackle those issues, but I think that at the basis of whatever here stems from the fact that he stalled so long to appoint his ministers, thereby making it almost impossible for them to get to work immediately as he had promised to hit the ground running.
All right, let's wait and see how that plays out in the coming probably days, weeks, months, and even years. But let me also just come to Yahya and also get his own view. Stanley is saying that there has been mixed reactions since the president took over power, and then he went on to give some examples. He made mention of the appointment of ministers and the effects that also brought on the economy and also on the performance of the government. But in your own opinion, how would you say that the president has performed so far?
Yes, I would like to. First of all, I would like to agree with Stanley on certain issues that he raised. The issue about appointment of cabinet, that was, I would say, something that Nigerians expected, like a speedy appointment of a government to hit the ground running. But this expectation, again, if we have to look what brought about this expectation, what brought about this high expectation from the incoming government, from Nigerians, I think it's not far-fetched. We can link this expectation to the inability of the previous states, the previous government, to perform their statutory duties, which is, first of all, the most important of any government, is provision of security of life and property. Where are we today as compared to where we were a year ago? Okay, the Northeast is much safer now. It's much safer now, even though we have issues of, the Niger Delta, recent Avengers blowing up of pipeline and other installations. The Northeast is safer now. People are returning back to their homes. The airport, which has been closed since 2014, is functional. So in that regard, I will give total credit. Okay, and second is the issue of appointment of cabinet. It took about 6 months, to put up a cabinet, of which there was nothing spectacular. We for that period of waiting, we expected something much more different, but what actually transpired was not far from, it wasn't spectacular. And another very important issue in this regard was passing of the budget. It took almost a year to pass that budget. First of all, we need to understand there's a shortfall in oil prices. Our revenues were dwindling, the reserve was dwindling, and then it takes almost this period of time to pass the budget. This had an adverse effect on the economy. There was for 2 quarters we had -4. -4. Excuse me. We had a -4 growth. There was a -4 growth for 2 quarters of the year. And if you look at corruption-wise, like he said, there's been, I don't know, surmountable amount of effort in curbing this neo-patrimonial nature of politics, client-patron relationship of politics that we practice in Nigeria. So as regards corruption and security, there's been some amount of, there's been satisfaction in main quarters. But you look at electricity, for example, there's been a shortfall in electricity supply, there's been a shortfall in fuel supply, there's been increase in forex rate. And these things are for obvious reasons. First of all, we need to understand that the electricity providing firm is being privatized by the last administration. There have been sabotages to, the government is like an overseeing function. There's a Ministry of Energy which oversees this function of these companies that provide these services. So there's a need to put in more effort in other aspects, like economy-wise. The average Nigerian today is not smiling. Things are really bad as compared to what they were in the previous administration. But again, we need to look into the fact that we don't have the resources to implement the intended policies of the promises of this. Most promises made during the campaign, the government doesn't have as much resource as it used to have to, implement these policies. So in my opinion, this is going to take quite a time. There's going to be cries from all quarters of the country, but there are prospects because the capital market is on a rebound. If you Mr. Stanley, you're a budget person, so you should follow this closely. The capital market is on a rebound. There are prospects, but it's a long-time prospect. We shouldn't expect any growth or development in a short-term period. It's not feasible, considering not only Nigerian economy, but the global, downfall in oil prices. This affects us a lot. We generate over 75% of our revenue from oil. So it's problematic, So it's a mixed feeling again, Mr. Stanley. I totally agree with you. There's been some success and there's been some disappointment. So it's a mixed feeling.
Well, you seem to agree with Stanley. However, while you were making some of those comments, Stanley was actually either nodding his head, but I don't know which, if it was in concurrence or otherwise, of the comments that you were making. Stanley, you might perhaps want to just let us know so I don't put a false impression, as to
Totally
why.
agree with him. I totally agree with his comment, especially with respect to Northeast. Is a lot more safer. I was reading recently about how places like Meduguri, property rates are going up because people are beginning to return home. I read someone yesterday who was saying that he was in Meduguri last week, and the sense of sea was gradually returning, unlike the palpable fear that was in the air the last time he was there. Yes, in the Northeast, the president has kept his words to confront the terrorists who are done, and we are beginning to see the results. But then also it then becomes very difficult to say he has completely done very the issue of the Fulani headsmen who have become also a huge threat to national security. Not forgetting, like Abu mentioned, the issue of Niger Delta militants. For me, I think that on the issue of Niger Delta, we just need a political solution. It has worked before, even though I did not completely agree with every. It has worked before. It's worth revisiting and probably reworking the method that was used, but it's something that can be solved if the same political will that has been brought to solving the Northeast challenge is also brought to bear on this issue. But the other area I would like to touch on is the issue of budget. Again, unfortunately, the challenges we had with preparation of the budget stems from the fact that the ministers were not appointed on time. The ministers had less than a month to work on it to prepare a national budget. For somebody who is coming, who is just new to the job, you need at least 2-3 weeks to even understand your way around your office building before you then settle down to doing budget. So that largely affected how we saw with respect to the budget. They can name it whatever, they can call it padding, they might call it missing budget or whatever it is, the name it is called. It all stemmed down to the fact that the ministers were not in place to propose it before submitting to the issue of the budget. Again, the issue of not late appointment of the ministers creep up. On the issue of the recession, because we have had two negative growth indicators, it means that we're officially in recession. On that issue, if you notice, the foreign investors were practically fleeing for a whole year because as much as they will say, oh, we are risk takers, we go to where things are uncertain, they need assurance that there is a direction to where that risk they are taking will take them to. So for 1 year, there was clearly no economic plan, which is something that investors can't stand. And rightly, they left Nigeria in droves and are now waiting outside the shores of Nigeria with their funds to be sure that there is a clear direction of what the economy will or where the economy will take. So that also, late appointment of ministers impacted the economy negatively, and the reports are clearly showing. Why is that with official results showing that the economy is tanking, I expect that there will be some sort of emergency approach to tackling the issue. There should be clearly outlined, because even if you are doing all of the wonderful works in the finance ministry's office in Abuja or in Asoro, if the investors who are outside are not, they are not under any obligation to put their money here. Typical example is our forex policy. Another example is our decision around fuel pricing. For more than a year, everybody, even the people who pay out of pocket, knew that our 87 naira per liter wasn't feasible, and we expected our government would have acted earlier to solve that problem. So there are myriads of issues that we think that can be tackled earlier faster than they're currently doing, and we expect that at the end of this 1 year, they will go back, take stock, and begin to recheck themselves again.
All right, let's hope they do as you are suggesting, or as you are hoping that they will do, to tackle these, so to speak now, small issues that could have been tackled head on long from now. But then in moving forward, Babatunde Ajile joins us. He is a writer. He's also here in Lagos, Nigeria. Well, Tunde, welcome first and foremost for joining us on the program. Good afternoon.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
All right. Good afternoon, Tunde. Well, let me just begin by saying that a lot of water has gone under the bridge before you came on board. Yahya and Stanley, say that well, they have one thing in common. They're saying there has been mixed feelings since the president took over power back in 2015. They believe there has been some successes, but on the other hand, they also believe that there are things that this administration could have done, simple things, or so to speak, things that could have been easily done, but are yet to be done. What would be your own appraisal so far of the president since he took over office?
I think the best appraisal of the president, in my opinion, would come from that speech that he made. In that speech, he quoted Shakespeare, where he said, "There's a tide in the affairs of men, and if you don't set sail and all of that." I can't remember it verbatim, but it was essentially that there's a time for you to do stuff, and when you miss doing the stuff in that time, it becomes harder to get them done. And I think the critical thing that happened with the administration was that when they came in, there were a lot of things that the early goodwill to them at that time they could have gotten to do some of the very hard and fundamental stuff, but they lost a lot of time. They didn't take that tide. Things like taking forever to appoint ministers, which then cascaded into a late budget, which cascaded into a lack of policy direction. That was one of that, in essence, sums up what we say about public policy is that not doing anything or delaying on doing stuff is a policy statement on its own. It's not only when you do stuff or you make policy statements that you have done stuff. When you delay on doing what you should do, you've also made a policy statement. So, in summary, the administration did reasonably well around security in the Northeast, but security everywhere else has been a failure. The economy is tethering at the edge of a recession as we speak. All of these things will tell me that if I was an examiner and I was assessing this admin, I would say the first year has not been a success. Hello?
In other words, you're saying they scored below 5.
Up below 5 out of 10 or 5 out of 100.
Like 5 out of 10.
Oh, they scored way below 5.
All right, very well. But then, if you could do me a favor, if you can move from where you are, the light is kind of reflecting into your camera, the light from the
The
window.
lights. There's no light where I am actually.
No, I mean light from the window.
How about now?
Oh, okay, this is a lot better.
How about now?
Oh, yeah, this is better.
How about now? I am not facing any window, but I am sitting very awkwardly.
Okay, I don't know if I'm the only one seeing it, Stanley. I mean, there's some purple flashes that keeps coming. All right,
Yeah, I'm seeing it. Okay, this is a problem. Let me go off and try and come back again.
all right, then we'll wait for it to come back again. But then, yeah, let me just come back to you. Today is saying that out of 10, um, in his own opinion, this government has scored way below 5. Do you agree with him?
First of all, if Mr. Tunde was on, I would like to ask him based on which criteria did he score the government on that point. Then, if he's convincing enough, then I will agree with him. But we're all entitled to our opinion. If it's his personal opinion, of course he's entitled to it. But if it is a personal opinion, I beg to differ on that. Except if he's convincing enough to convince me he did assess the government like that. And there's an issue that about, and also Tunde, about policies and whatnot. This issue about policy, we need to understand the fact that before you articulate, formulate, and implement policies, the most important aspect of any policy is the revenue imperative of that policy. We're experiencing like a dwindling, revenue income. Like the inflow of revenue is dwindling. There's little foreign investment. So there's pretty much less that the government can do to formulate policies. Like recently, the finance minister in a press conference did mention that agencies should not expect complete funds on appropriation as regarding 2016 budget. So even if these funds have been passed, they shouldn't expect the complete fund, that the government is going to only release funds based on necessity. This spells out that, yes, we are in a recession. The government cannot meet up its policies for obvious reason, our dependence on oil and the fall in the prices of oil. So there's a need to see this from a logical perspective. How do you formulate policies? You need money to formulate policies. Do we have these resources? Yes or no? We don't. So it's very simple. The indicators of increase in rebound in the financial market shows that there's foreign influence, there's inflow of foreign capital, but very minimal. Now that we are having our security issue in check, except for the recent bombings and the Fulani herdsmen, like Stanley duly mentioned, there's a possibility of growth in the nearest future, but it is not something that we should expect to happen overnight, just like that. Yes, they made campaign promises. Every administration or politics, it's based around these promises, and we as Nigerians choose a preference based on this. We how can I say, these policies appeal to us during the campaign. They appeal to our needs as Nigerians. But now we have to understand the fact also that these policies, for them to be implemented, we need revenue, of which is very much scarce. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. The fall in oil prices is bringing about cuts. Even in the most developed nations, government are putting cuts to public welfare. So the removal of fuel subsidy, we will feel the pain. But in the long run, if these policies are truly, followed up and, implemented to its core, I think we will all benefit from this in the end. Hello, Victor.
Hello, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
All
it
right.
for me for now.
Oh yeah, I was just trying to say, I'm just trying to recap what you were trying to say, but one key stuff you were talking about was the dwindling prices and oil and how there is no enough money, even as confirmed by in a press statement by the finance minister.
Yes.
But so Stanley, let me just ask you, but before I do that, let me first of all introduce Adamu Dankore. He joins us. Adamu, well, it's actually afternoon here. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Iowa, USA.
Okay, thank you very much. I will come back to you in just a moment. Well, Stanley, what I was trying to ask was, does that mean we're running this budget on a deficit? And what will be the implications? Hold on, Stanley, please. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, the budget was already predicated on the fact that it would be a deficit budget, largely financed by debt borrowed from both local and foreign sources. That fact was when the budget proposal was sent to the National Assembly. What we have seen now and what is different now is the fact that more than expected. The revenue that the government was expecting to generate internally and from all sources, not from borrowing, internally generated revenue, revenue from oil sources, is not going to meet government targets. For example, the federal revenue had a target of that target for as federal government share. That target has not been met. At the moment, they are doing about and February numbers that we have seen. So it already means that what they expect to even earn is already taking a hit. Import is down with all the challenges with fuel import and all of that. It also means that the volume of fuel that was coming in had also largely dropped. So customs collection also is expected to be lower than expected, at least in the first quarter of the year. So all of that already means that financial projections increased challenges in the Niger Delta. We have lost about 700,000 barrels of crude exports per day already to Niger Delta militants. It means that even with low oil prices, it's already a zero sum. Even if the prices go up, because we can't even meet our target. So yes, the budget can't be fully implemented. The finance minister was right that the budget cannot be fully implemented if the numbers we have seen so far is anything to go by. But the thing that we need to also pay attention to is government borrowing. This year is very huge. Almost 2 trillion will be borrowed to finance the 2016 budget. That's why they're looking to the Asians to see what kind of bond they can raise from that. So yes, it's going to be really tough. This first year will be tough in terms of how much government collects and how it impacts budget implementation.
All right. Your internet was kind of breaking along the line, but then Patrick Imo joins us. Patrick, you're joining using two devices. I would suggest you drop one to avoid audio bounces. Patrick. All right. Very well. Very well. Thanks for.
Yeah, done that.
All right. So can you just bring your camera down a bit?
Yeah. Sure.
All right. And quickly tell us where you're calling from.
You mean me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm calling from Akwa Ibom State.
Okay. Where in Akwa Ibom?
Eket.
Okay, Eket. If you can put some light in your room, we'll come back to you in a moment.
All right.
Yeah. All right, Adam Udankore, let me just come to you also. Now you are calling from Iowa. That's in the United States. What would be? I mean, so much has been said. Some say it's a mixed feeling since the president took over. Someone outrightly said the administration hasn't done so much since taking over. But how do you rate this administration?
Hi, Victor. Thank you very much for having me. Hello to the house. As far as I'm concerned, Victor, there's a couple things I would like to rate this administration. The number one thing, the most important thing to me, is the devolution of powers. For me, that is the first thing that the administration should have done. But before I come to that, let me say something about security, the fight of Boko Haram. I think there has been a recorded success on that. But I think for me, Victor, what stood to me and what I was looking for when Buhari came to power was the devolution of powers. I was hoping that, as they have in the APC manifesto, to devolve powers, back to our states, back to our local governments, even back to our communities. That hasn't been done. For me, that is the most important thing, and because it isn't there, none has been done, or none has been done, or proposed, at least at the moment. At least not that I'm aware of. And something like this, the devolution of powers that I was expecting, would be something that would require constitutional amendment, because Victor, to me, that is our Nigeria's biggest problem. It's like having a house with a weak foundation. You cannot, you can do some cosmetics around the house, but you will still be left with a major foundation problem. You have to fix that foundation before everything works. So that's kind of how I was hoping things would go. They come in, they start working on that foundation, which is, I don't know what, maybe call for a constitutional amendment or propose one themselves, but that has not been done, Victor. And for me, that is an F.
All right, but some will see that this foundation you're talking about as perhaps now the fight against corruption and even insecurity, like you rightly mentioned earlier on. Don't you think that's also a foundation that maybe in their own thinking, because I'm not part of the government and I don't hold brief for the government, but don't you think that would have been like, maybe perhaps they might be thinking, they could have been thinking that, okay, we'd probably do devolution of powers later on, but first and foremost, why don't we take a look at the security issues, take a look at how we can block some leakages, fight corruption and what have you?
Oh my God, Victor, thank you very much for this question. The question you asked me is the issue of the egg and the chicken, and I think this is, to me, is a huge misconception that is going on in Nigeria, that corruption is the cause of a problem. Corruption is not the cause of a problem, Victor. Corruption is a symptom of a bad system. So if you come to a house, like I said, if you come to a house, your windows is bad, your doors are bad, but you have a foundation problem. That window is the corruption. The foundation is the devolution of powers. So you could be doing something about corruption, Victor, but without doing the underlying problem, the foundational problem, you will still end up in the same situation you find yourself. So that's why I think, to me, corruption is not the cause. So since it's not the cause, it shouldn't be the main objective. It should be an objective, all right, but it shouldn't be the main. So what I was expecting was they come for a conference, a national conference, where Nigerians decide on how we want our federalism to be, or propose amendment themselves, and have it passed in the National Assembly, and as well as the State House Assembly. And then, while that is going on, continue to fight corruption. But Victor, the most important, I think, the highlight of your question is the issue of which one comes first. You fight corruption and then devolution, or vice versa. The question is, I'm repeating myself here, but I think this is very important, Victor. This is very important. Corruption is a symptom of a bad system. So in order to get rid of that system and the corruption, you have to fix the system. It's like if I'm suffering from malaria. In order for me to get rid of malaria, the fever, the symptom of malaria, that's not what I'm going to fight for. I'm not going to go solely to fight the fever, but I'm going to go for the parasite in my bloodstream. So what I'm saying is, corruption is not a cause. Corruption is not a cause of a problem, but devolution of powers. So we have to go for the foundation, Victor. That is not stopping us from doing that.
All right, very well. Thankfully, we have political scientists in the house, whom I'm very sure would like to address some of the issues you made mention of. But then Eket, I beg your pardon, Patrick Imokol from Eket in Akwa Ibom. Let's just come to him to also get his thoughts on the president's performance since he took over power. Patrick.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so so far so good. It's been, from my own perspective, a wonderful 1 year. Everything didn't go quite well, but I think he's making good enough efforts in leading Nigeria the right way. I'm just going to speak about his performance in different sectors. Let me start with the fight against Boko Haram. I think he's done pretty much well in that regard, considering what happened and how the fight was in the previous administration. Used to getting this news about Haram doing this and doing that, and that has drastically reduced. As regards the economy, we are not doing quite well. That cannot be blamed on the present administration, because our revenue was basically rested on oil, and we do not drive the price of oil in the international market. Oversupply is what has caused the price of oil to drop. So you can't basically blame that on the government. Good enough, we're diversifying the economy, going into other aspects in terms of mining, in terms of agriculture. So I also feel he's doing a lot as well in that regard. For me, if I want to rate the government, I think I'm going to give him a 75%. Basically, yeah. Thank you.
All right, very well. You were saying that it's been a very good year, 75%. I mean, in academic parlance, that would be like 70. That would be like an A, so to speak. But then Adamu earlier was raising some, questions as to which way the administration could have gone, and he said he would have preferred the devolution, the powers were devolved, to the states and local governments. But then Yahaya Yakubu, who happens to be a political scientist, was actually on the side listening, waiting to perhaps respond to some of those comments that Adamu made. Yahaya, do you agree with him I mean, with the assertions that he made?
Yes, Adamu, I pretty much understand the concerns that you've raised as regard devolution of power. First, you have to understand that this is a constitutional design that entails bringing everybody to a round table and trashing this issue out. First of all, we operate a very centralized federal system. The reason for that is not far-fetched. We are very much dependent on natural resources. Whichever resources lies in the ground of the country belongs to the federal government. So the federal government has a right to give license to firms to extract these resources. You get, there's a centralized tax system. Even if there's a devolution of power, the inability of states to be autonomous in terms of revenue generation, they cannot necessarily formulate any policy because they get allocation from the federal arm of the government. There's no autonomy to state have their internally generated fund, but it doesn't meet the expenditure of the state. There needs to be it entails more than a constitutional design. There is need to, which term should I, there's need to reframe the economic setting of the country. There's need to change ways, channel of distribution, there's a need to address the channel of revenue generation and distribution for us to be able to talk about devolution of power. Certain things need to be put in place because there's no devolution of power without autonomy. I think since you have much knowledge about this devolution of power, you should know that it goes with the economy hand in hand, because I cannot give you autonomy to make your own policies when you don't have the resources to implement these policies. So it is very tricky situation, and considering the ethnic heterogeneity of Nigeria, at this juncture in time, we have more pressing issues than devolution of power. They are basic needs and necessities of average Nigerians that needs to be put into consideration before, and there's need to be institutional rebasement. Our institutions need to be restructured for us to even consider this the devolution of power.
All right, very well, Madamu. I hope you are convinced, or I mean, I hope you are convinced, because I noticed you were nodding actually this time around in concurrence with what Yahya was saying. Okay, if you're not, let me just give you a few moments to quickly respond before we move on. Go ahead, I've unmuted your mic.
Thank you very much, Victor. Thank you for you've raised a really salient issues on really how devolution works. So we are already, like you said, we are already a centralized system, and you cannot give somebody like
sorry, Adam, if you can come again. We're having issues with your audio. I don't know if it's your
okay.
earphones. Yeah.
Is that okay now?
Still the same thing.
Still the same. Okay, let me see. What about now?
Still the same thing.
Still the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means it's probably the network or something else.
All right, go ahead then.
Is it getting better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So he's right. You cannot give somebody a responsibility, like for example, state police, if they can't even take care of themselves. The way the evolution works, and the way I belong to a group, we call ourselves the Federalist Movement of Nigeria, and I personally have a plan that would nurture states.
All right, Adam. Actually, just hold on. Actually, I'm not the only one expressing that concern. Patrick actually can't hear you very well. I don't know if Stanley can, or Yahya, can you hear him very well? Yahya, can you hear him very well?
But you can try again. Try speaking. Let's see.
All right, Victor. What about now? Is that okay?
It's still the same thing. Like, it has just this like kind of cracks in it. Like I don't know, like yeah. And it wasn't like that when you spoke earlier.
Right, and really nothing has changed. Huh.
Can you unplug your earplugs?
It's unplugged. What about now?
Oh, it's still the same thing.
Still the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I can end it and rejoin again, or?
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Stanley, if you can hear me. Stanley, can you hear me? All right, I think Stanley can hear me. But Patrick, let me just come back to you. You actually gave the administration a 75% score in the first 1 year. But then a lot of people might disagree with you, looking at the fact that a lot of things have been going on. There's a hike in fuel price, hike in electricity bills, though the supply of electricity is not commensurate. The economy is kind of dwindling. And a few cries, here and there. How do you balance that with the 75% score mark you've given to the administration?
First, let me react to Ike and Fabio. When people say the supply of power isn't commensurate with the hike, find it laughable. And I'm going to explain why. you pay for only what you use. As far as power is concerned in Nigeria, even though paid meter hasn't been rolled out to everyone, most people still use a postpaid meter, and I think more of Nigerians are billed based on an estimated billing system. And truth be told, you're actually supposed to pay for what you are being, you're actually supposed to pay for what you consume. So in a situation where you say power supply isn't commensurate with the hike in power, I wonder what that means. Because kilowatt hour is what I pay for. So I have a situation where even in Eket, I do switch off my power just because I do not want to consume more than I can be billed for. You get it? So basically, I think there was a time where we about this, and I said that wasn't a cause of concern. If we want to argue about the power in Nigeria, we shouldn't base it based on the fact that the supply isn't commensurate with what you pay. Let's argue power based on some other reasons. You know, it is not when the power supply reaches 24 hours per day that you should not expect a hike in power. I have many Nigerians who do not even pay for power. Like the area where I stay, my vicinity, I have people whose power has been disconnected, and towards evening they have a way of having it connected, and in the morning they get it disconnected again. If we have things like this happening in this country, how do you expect these people who are actually the distribution companies to make money? You know, so corruption has really eaten into us. It's not just the government that is corrupt, the people themselves are corrupt. And if the people do not make the conscious effort of curbing corruption, no matter what the government does, it's going to be in vain. Okay, so that's it for hike in power. Now for hike in fuel price, I do not agree with the government on that. Reason being that the estimation as to how the government got up to 105 naira is based on several factors. Nigerians are made to pay for the fact that we export fuel, we export crude and import fuel. That is burdensome on the Nigerian people. We are not meant to pay for that. The fact that forex cannot be provided by the government, Nigerians are also paying for that. So basically, these two things are what have contributed to the price getting as high as 145. To the previous administration, Jonathan, where he totally removed subsidy. I think that was January 1st, 2012, where the NLC went on strike, and it was almost leading to a revolution in Lagos State. It wasn't up to this. It wasn't as bad as this. Fuel price wasn't less than $50 then. It was above $100. And if at 2012 we're having that amount for fuel, compare it with the reality of today. So a situation where the government feels the people need to be the ones to be charged for forex, as well as the fact that we do not have functioning refineries in the country, that I totally do not agree with. I feel the government should still bear that burden and not poor people. Thanks.
All right, very well, Patrick. Thanks for that comment. But Adamu, let me just come back to you quickly. Just respond to Yahya because we're running out of time and we have to close the conversation anytime soon.
All right. Thank you, Victor. I hope you can hear me clearly now.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yahya, thank you very much for making that statement. Now, devolution, you're right. You cannot hand over responsibility to someone that doesn't have the income to do so. Now, the way you do that is to systematically build, like for example, I am of the opinion that we should create a fourth tier of government to be known as the municipal government or our community government. So where we live, I live in Damaturu in Yobe State, for example. Damaturu will have its own power. So you cannot take, for example, education, which is best served at the community level or at the municipal level, to give it to Damaturu when Damaturu has no source of revenue. What you need to do is to build it, to systematically build the maturu. When it's ready, you give it to it. It's just like a baby. When a baby is born, the only thing the baby can take is milk. Even, as the baby gradually grows, you can start giving it food. And then when it grows, it can take anything. Like me, I can take anything. So that's how the evolution works. So it is absolutely doable. People have done it. The key point here is you put a system there, and we have a plan. Like I said, I am in a group, we call ourselves the Federalist Movement of Nigeria. I personally have a plan that after you create that fourth year of government, you can start developing the infrastructure of all the various levels systematically, and as businesses grow, because the taxes will go to these communities. For example, sales tax. Anything I buy in Damaturu, part of it will go to Damaturu, and as Damaturu grows with these taxes, if Damaturu is ready, Damaturu can take over education. If the Damaturu is ready, the Damaturu can take over police. So that way you grow up and you phase out allocation. Allocation is the number 2 problem we have. Number 1 is the system, that first system that we need to have that we do not. And number 2 is allocation. Allocation is bad for Nigeria, but that's how you do it, yeah.
Right, very well. Stanley, you've been actually very quiet on the chat. Let me just come to you to also foundation, and he felt the government should have hit the ground running, by introducing some form of devolution of powers. But Yahya was of the opinion that, oh no, he that's possible, but I mean, he made his own statement as to why devolution cannot just be put in place. But then, what do you think? What do you think the government should have done first, or so to speak? Now, what do you think should have been the foundation of this government when they took over power in mid last year? Yo, Stanley, are you there? All right, it seems we're losing Stanley, but let me just come back to you now. We have to start wrapping up, Adamu. Let me just ask quickly what you would like to see moving forward in few sentences, please.
Victor, I would like to see devolution of power. Call for conference. Let's decide our future. There's nothing other more important than that. That will solve almost everything that we know. Corruption. It will create job. It is just the right thing to do. If I have a house that has a foundation problem, the first thing I will do, even though my window is bad, I will fix the foundation first.
All right, very well, Adamu. Dankore, thanks for calling on the program today. You're calling from Iowa in the United States. Yeah, let me also come to you. You are calling from Istanbul, that's in Turkey, to get what you would like to see moving forward. Hold on, please. All right, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to say that there's, like I said earlier, there's mixed feeling, but the fact that I did give my vote to the administration means whatever I say, I would like to see is my opinion as an individual, and giving that mandate to the administration means that I trust in their policies to take us to where we want to be, at least. So, and real quickly, if I can address Adamu's issue as to regards devolution, we are not in a state where we can bring in any sort of constitutional design at the moment in Nigeria. It's far-fetched. You talked about Yobe, Damaturu. If you give autonomy to Yobe, how much can it generate from internally generated revenue? How can it pay its workers? The problem, allocation is not our problem. Equality or equity in distribution of allocation rather is our problem. Thank you very much, Victor, for having me.
You're welcome, Yahya. Thanks also for coming, Patrick. You are calling from Eket, that's an
Hello, Victor.
Yes, please go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, so what I want to see moving forward, I want to see a more intense fight against insurgency. New one has just developed, which is the Niger Delta militants. I want a situation where things can be settled, dialogue if possible, and everyone's grievances are attended to. I want to see more diversification in the economy. Encourage private investors to come in, even if it means giving them tax holiday. We're not giving them these things forever. If it's a 5-10 year tax holiday period, it's gonna drive in, more investors into the country, more improvements in supply, and then finally, as regards crude and fuel, I foresee a situation where we give more licenses to private investors to establish refineries. And Dangote is doing that already, bringing more. Let's have our crude refined in country, and I feel things will be better for Nigerians. Thank you.
All right, Patrick, thank you also for coming on the program, and we're hoping Stanley and Tunde could come back also to join us in this, but then here we are at the end of the program, and they are not here. But then we also acknowledge those who are watching via the live stream. Thanks also for being part of the program, and for those of you that were tweeting at us. Let's just quickly take a moment to see if we could read some of those tweets. Okay, yeah, so just a couple of them are here. Okay, we just saw Patrick. Patrick is actually with us, so no need to read Patrick's comment. Very poor. Scratch that. The performance level has been extremely poor. She says. Yemi Adepoju says preferred to previous gangsters. I beg your pardon. Sorry for that. Preferred to previous people in power. Hopefully things will be back to normal soonest. Well, for Irijoluwa at Niger says it's not same, but shame, because the question was is it same or change? Well, another comment is from John Ufos. He says, shame, same, or worse. Again, so it does not mention the economy. It is really bad. But then we have Stanley back on the program. Stanley, we're just running up, so we would like to just hear from you what you would like to see moving forward. Stanley, if you're here.
Moving forward, I expect that governments. Hello?
Yeah, all right, we can hear you now. Go
Victor,
ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hello?
I can hear you now, Stanley. Go ahead.
What I think that government can do immediately is that they need to pay a lot more attention to the economic issues, because if you think that the challenges we have
Well, I think Stanley, like Patrick is saying, is experiencing some network issues. But then we have to wrap it up now. Once again, thank you to all of you for being part of the program. This is where we call it wraps. Again, it's a Google Plus Hangout for Channels Beam, and I'm Victor Matthias.